welcome to another episode of the Young Guns podcast. And today we have another trade to announce. Ilya Lyubushkin leaves the Buffalo Sabres and gets traded to the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for a 2025 fourth round pick, which belongs to the Minnesota Wild. So, why does this deal happen? Well, for the Buffalo Sabres, it was a situation where they kind of just had too much of a surplus of defensemen. If you go and look at their roster, you go and look at their team, you go and look at their decor, especially. They had nine defensemen before this with Ilya Lyubushkin in the lineup. But obviously, if you look, they had Rasmus Dahlin, Matthias Samuelsson. They signed Connor Clifton in free agency. They brought in Eric Johnson, Henry Jokiharju, Jacob Bryson, Riley Stillman, and then obviously Owen Power. So there was just no room for Ilya Lyubushkin in Buffalo. And at $2.7 million, it just didn't seem right for him to stay in Buffalo, especially given the fact that they had signed two defensemen during free agency. And so the expectation was from a lot of Sabres fans and also in general, a lot of fans in general was that the Buffalo Sabres were going to trade Ilya Lyubushkin away at some point. He ends up going to Anaheim. And what's interesting about the Anaheim Ducks is they're in a little bit of an interesting position because they're not ready to compete yet, but they acquire this guy at $2.7 million who can be a decent top six defenseman for them. And he provides good defensive play for them. He's a good defensive defenseman. He's a big body. He can throw the body. He can get into the corners as well, and be a little bit more feisty. So he's a guy that I think is going to help the Ducks a lot, especially with the fact that they already got a guy like Radko Gudas and a guy like Robert Hagg. The expectation for the Ducks this year is that they're not going to be very good, but it allows a guy like Ilya Lyubushkin to take time away from some young guys and allow the young guys to develop a little bit better. So I think he probably slots in on the Ducks bottom, top six. I think he's probably maybe their fifth best defenseman or their fourth best defenseman. I don't know if him and Radko Gudas probably play together. I don't see that as a possibility. I think if you look at the Anaheim Ducks, I think they're probably going to want a good right hand side. And obviously, with Jamie Drysdale and now Radko Gudas, you add Ilya Lyubushkin to that. It's a pretty good right hand side for them. It's not a super fantastic right hand side, but it's a right hand side that's going to do the job, considering the fact that the Anaheim Ducks, like I said before, are probably not going to be a playoff team and are going to be a rebuilding team. They also have a lot of prospects like Pavel Mintyukov, who could potentially make the team. Obviously, Jackson Lacombe and Drew Hellison as listed on Daily Faceoff. So there is some possibilities for the Anaheim Ducks, but it's a move that makes sense. I like this a little bit for the Ducks. For Lyubushkin, he's a 29-year-old right shot defenseman. He's 6'2". He's 200 pounds, but he's played for four NHL teams now in his NHL career. He obviously played really well for the Arizona Coyotes during his time there. There was a lot of Yotes fans that really, really liked him. He went to Toronto, didn't really have the best time in Toronto. Did well, did okay, but wasn't, I don't think, what Toronto fans expected from him. And then obviously he goes to Buffalo. And last year he had a really good year, at least points wise. He played really well considering his point totals. He had a career high in points, 2 goals, 12 assists, 14 points in 68 games. He was a -2 on the Buffalo Sabres. So I think that there's definitely an opportunity for this guy to have a fresh start. Obviously, he's been in the Pacific Division before, in the Central before, sorry, with the Arizona Coyotes. So he's familiar with that division. At least he goes out west, which is good for the Sabres. They don't have to face him a lot this year as well. But for him, I mean, he's in the prime of his career. He's 29 years old. This is a guy that I think is mainly a depth defenseman in the NHL on a lot of good teams, especially playoff teams. But for the Anaheim Ducks, I think he can provide some good value, especially at 2.75 million. He can provide some value. He can bring in some good, numbers that can maybe help him either get traded at the trade deadline for another pick if the Ducks want to flip him, or next year in free agency when he becomes a free agent if he wants to go and potentially re-sign somewhere else or get essentially sign somewhere else. It could be a very good opportunity for him to do so. So I think it's a move that the Ducks take a gamble on. Listen, they trade a fourth round pick in 2025. It's not a big deal considering everything that's gone on. But if you go and look at the Jay Fresh here, just his little post, he really didn't have a good year in terms of his actual projected wins above replacement. He was obviously at 15%, which is in the low percentile of it. However, if you look at everything, Very good defensive defenseman, as stated before. Um, so he's mainly that. He's a defensive defenseman. He can play on your penalty kill. Obviously, his finishing went up last year considering his point totals. But all in all, I think this is a defenseman that is going to play. He's going to be a depth guy. He's really going to be a depth guy. He might get opportunity. He's going to get a lot more opportunities in Anaheim that I think he might be able to thrive in. And so I like it. I think it's a good move for everyone involved. Obviously, if you're the Buffalo Sabres, I think there's probably not much room there for him in terms of the defense. Like I said before, a fourth round pick is a good move. It's about equivalent value to what Jeff Petrie got traded for from Montreal. So that's probably the value of the defenseman. I would say it's pretty low, but for Lyubushkin, considering the fact that he hasn't really lived up to his expectations, at least last year defensively, or the fact that he was not the best in terms of his wins above replacement, I think plays a factor in that. But still, a fourth round pick I think is a good move for the Buffalo Sabres. It's a draft pick they can use in potentially acquiring something else in the near future, or if they want to go and potentially trade that for a forward or a goaltender, because I know their goaltending situation is a little bit interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what the Buffalo Sabres do with that fourth round pick, if they end up using it or trading it. But besides that, I think it's ultimately just a minor move. Nothing too big between these two teams, but again, it allows something that the Ducks need, which is they need more NHL players, they need more defensemen, and obviously they have to use their cap space, so they use it in a way that's very entertaining. With the 2.75 million acquisition of Lyubushkin, but it's for a year, so it's not a big deal. And they have the cap space to do it, and they give up a draft pick, which the Ducks have a plethora of draft picks already. So it isn't really a big deal in that regard. So besides that, that's pretty much it. And let us know, guys, in the comments down below what your thoughts are on this deal. Do you think Buffalo made a good move trading Lyubushkin? If you're a Sabres fan, are you happy about this? If you're a Ducks fan, what are your expectations for the year? And where do you think Lyubushkin slots into your lineup? Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and thank you for watching. And we'll see you guys in the next episode of the Young Guns podcast. Thank you very much.